Hello there, and welcome back to our Orlando Timelapse series. In today's episode we switch the site on our Mainstreet and start with the construction of the first building. When you have watched the last 4 episodes, you could see that I created there 4 buildings on this site. But on this site that you just see, we have to care about 6 buildings instead. For me, as I'm speaking, this entire side of the Mainstreet is already done and I'm way more ahead in the park. But looking back to it, all the following buildings that are going to come now, they feature way more difficult, complex details than the other side. So especially on the building that we are just creating today, I felt this the most, since it's directly starting with all those details. Like on the other side, it starts off very moderate, and with each building that comes next, the detail or complexity meter goes up in a way. But again, here on this building, it's directly in your face. When I remember correctly here, I built this somewhere in between the years, so end of December, early January, and especially the beginning here, to set down something here, to have this layout going on this building. I found it so difficult, and I'm not even too sure why this is the case. It's certainly on one side the complexity of this whole building and all of its details, but maybe even more the fact that it's the first instance where we have both facades happening on the left and right of the street. So because they are so very near to each other, you suddenly can compare them in their height and proportion. And that's of course, when we are doing a recreation here, very important that we have there the right height relationship. Previously we always managed height in this game per side. So for example, when we have the city hall, we are making sure that on this side the city hall is in the right height relative to the buildings that's surrounding it. But suddenly, because both sides are so very spatial close together, we have to also make sure that each side is in the right height to each other. In before we had this a little bit happening also with the Emporium building and the confectionery, since they are in a way the first buildings in this street. But I feel now the buildings, since they are directly facing each other, this comes now even more apparent when you see later on then the street there, and when one side is a little bit higher than the other one, I think you will notice this. Ultimately, I think it comes down also to the height of the backlot. When you are seeing those 4 big backlot sections that are directly behind the facades here, they appear to me also at the very same height. And so that's roughly the plan right now, where we made sure that this height is a very fixed one, and literally everything else that we are having, for example also the height of those facades here, they have to kind of fit to that. But even having said that, for me the biggest priority is always the proportion. When this thing on the front looks somewhat like the building in reality, then I think I did a fairly good job here, and even when the highest point on this facade exceeds the actual height in reality by 1 meter or so, I think we are good here. As long as the proportion and overall look is on point, that's all we care about. For example, if we take Google Earth here, they have their feature where you can actually see the height on any point where your cursor is on. Now personally, it's a great tool, no question about that. But since it only displays there this height in steps of 1 meter, it's a pretty rough estimate and you can't really rely too much on that. And the other big thing that you always have to keep in mind when recreating now the Magic Kingdom, that we have here a slight incline from the very start of this entrance area up to the other end of the park behind Fantasyland. And it's only 1 or 2% in incline, but over this distance of like 400 meters, you have still there a height difference of up to 4 meters. And that's of course something that I noticed at the very start of this project. Should I now incorporate this small incline into this entire park in this game? And so at least, as you see, I did not. It would be of course nice to have that in theory here, but the extra effort versus the reward that you would visually see isn't really that strong, I think. When you are in reality on this place, because you have your physical body with you, you have a much different experience how you feel yourself in this park. And my assumption is, because you can feel the gravitational forces around you, you might can also feel a little bit of that incline. Since we don't have anything of that in our game here, I don't think that extra effort would really make it worth it. I could be wrong here, but just the imagination of adjusting everything that we have built in this park to that short incline. I mean, surely it's doable, but it would be quite some work, right? For now, I think we will evade this topic. Maybe at some point where we are extremely far in the park and where we kinda see then also the effect fully working with the castle and the Mainstreet and even the Fantasyland in the background, we kinda need all that stuff in place before we can kinda test its effect on us. So yeah, it's a pretty open topic and at some point we might come back to it. But so far you can see that I work myself now to the rough logic of this building, and one thing that I noticed when searching for reference images here, it seems there was some sort of an renovation of this place, especially regarding the lower part of it. On some images taken from 2016, for example, you see that this middle section is enclosed to the bottom. So it's not like right here where I have a doorway in the middle and on the left and right you have a window happening, but instead it's inverse there. The middle section is enclosed, you have a window there, and on the left and right you have an entrance to the building. Now, personally, I do not really know why they exactly found this conversion reasonable enough so that they made it then. I could imagine that the accessibility for disabled people could be an argument for it, or they just like to have a bigger entrance here, since there are probably many people roaming around here, right? When you saw the comments on the last few episodes, I think it's a fairly emotional topic, or at least meaningful topic, that there are people that like a certain variation that they saw maybe in the past more than what is currently happening in the park. So for example, in the last episode we spoken about that the flower street or flower market was replaced in the 80s or 90s by the 8-sided Emporium building that we are having on the opposing side of this main street. And it's of course debatable and questionable if that's a good decision or a great idea to replace something so beautiful with another big building. But I think since we are the whole time in the perspective of recreating this park and respecting all the details that it has, we also have to respect its mistakes or areas that are not that popular. I think it helps sometimes to stay forcefully neutral and objective on certain things, because let's be honest, everything that we are showcasing in this park here, it displays this time period, how the park currently looks like. And if we are suddenly presenting here something that differs vastly from what you are actually seeing right now in reality, then I think we are kind of watering down the recreational value of this whole recreation here. I think after all, that's one of the things that make this recreation great, because whatever you see here, you can be assured that it also looks the very same, of course, in a very abstract form, also right here in our park. Otherwise, my own subjective opinion would kinda collide with the idea of this recreation. That's not what I want. I don't want to put myself now in the forefront of this park in deciding what is good or bad. I'm only here to build all the things in order to then display those things through the park. I want that the park itself has this emotional interaction with you. And I think the only way in how we can achieve both here is by making variations in the end. So when you later on then play the park for yourself, you can decide what you like most, and you can kinda piece together your dream park of the Magic Kingdom. But as I said, if you want to have a very recent and accurate approach to this whole park that is matching with what we have in reality happening, then I think we also need this variation, even if we don't like that. I mean, don't get me wrong here. there were many changes and also things that affect the future of this park, where I'm absolutely puzzled about and question the ideals behind it. So for example, the plan to replace a big portion of the Rivers of America area and Tom Sawyer's Island by this Cars franchise in creating like a complete different area that circles around this universe, which is absolutely mentally insane if you ask me, because there's absolutely no reason to break up this natured Frontierland theming that is, in my opinion, not only working very good right now, but it is vital as a background theming for all the different areas and rides that are surrounding it. So for instance, Big Thunder Mountain, Haunted Mansion, Liberty Square area, and even parts of Splash Mountain are all circling around this natured-themed area. And I mean, you see the same thing also in other Disney parks like Anaheim or Paris, for example. You also have there always the introduction of a bigger lake or right here a river system that brings out this beauty in nature that you need for the Frontierland theming to work. Now, when you see it from a very effective angle, you could of course find here arguments where the actual usage for the average park guest does not really justify this big portion of land in the park. When you see it on a map, it's even larger than Tomorrowland, and therefore there is not really that much happening for your average guest. And so surely, if you want to give your guests a lot more attractions and things to get their adrenaline going, surely you have to provide there another area, maybe with another coaster or a tracked ride. But I would argue you need this big, in some eyes, unnecessary space in order to support all the different areas, because you need this pacing in the park that is extremely vital, I think. When you don't have there the right pacing, the quality and the appearance of all your rides that you are having in this park, they will decrease. When you see Big Thunder Mountain already from very far away across this river system, it elevates your journey until you get there. It's playing with those weenies. So this whole open and widespread area is not only used for relaxation and where you can come down after all those thrilling rides, but especially for orientation. No matter where you are currently, you can always be assured that this rivered formation brings you very naturally at some point to your location that you might see over the other side of this river. And so this already has some kind of effect on your own decision making where to go next then. When you, for example, see on Big Thunder Mountain a huge crowd, then of course you might want to evade it for now and go for Haunted Mansion instead. And so I think it's extremely vital and important to have this area and how it functions, that it gives you a healthy and balanced flow through the park. Otherwise, when you are completely bulldozing down this entire area and replace it with maybe another favorite popular theme of Disney here, only for the sake of it and to increase forcefully the capacity of the park, then you will lose so much of the flow and natural design that this park already has. I mean, maybe that's the most sad thing about all of that, because it's absolutely not needed. I think this whole area and all the attached rides are working already brilliantly. You don't need to artificially want too much on another area. I mean, there's a reason why you have this famous quote, "Less is more" sometimes. And I think it's absolutely right also here. I mean, if you really have to force it now, since you are completely in line and stand behind what Walt Disney has said, Disneyland will never be completed. It will continue to grow as long as there is imagination left in the world. Personally, I'm a big fan of this quote and of Walt Disney, of course, but you can't make, or shouldn't at least, justify every change you make in those Disney parks, only because it seems it's in line with what he has said. Everything that you are going to plan and make in those Disney parks should make sense in themselves, relative to their location and how are people react in them. First of all, it should benefit the park itself and the people that visit it. That's the thing. And when you really take those words directly, they imply of let it grow and not replace something that already works very good. When you really want to grow Disneyland as its whole, then you would have to expand the estate around this park and to take those words seriously. Surely it makes sense to change something, but only if the benefits outweigh the negatives. It's the same thing also in Anaheim. There I find it even more disturbing because they want to add to California Adventure Park this Avatar experience in the northeast corner. And this means it's directly squeezed into the main park on the north and the adventure park on the south. Now, when I saw the artwork that they presented on their site, I have to say it looks kinda promising, and there is a certain amount of flow and dynamic in how this pedestrian bridge, for example, spans over this street and it glides you pretty much into this area between the parks. So I'm kinda getting why they wanna do that change. There are some benefits, no question about that. But are they enough to justify such a big change that will forever alter the experience on how we enter this park? In before, we had there a very spacious arrival area and also 4 big bus stops that would get you to the site. And if they suddenly are missing and this whole space gets even more narrow and squeezed down because you now have the Avatar area from the south coming, I'm not too sure on a very crowded day if it's still a pleasant experience to come here. I mean, surely those buses will stop on a outside location, maybe on the street itself. But the whole reasoning behind this new Avatar area is, I think, get more people in the park. So I'm very splitted here on this thing. It's maybe not that disturbing as I initially said here, but it leaves me with some question marks here, because how won't they realistically establish so much change on this so far already working park, I think. I mean, it's Disney after all, probably they can do anything here, but then I'm a little bit puzzled why they are so fixated on so rather small areas. I mean, when I would be the #1 entertainment company in the world in providing all those fantastic theme parks, why not think a little bit more bigger and spacious? Just build another park and add all those things that don't really fit in those already pretty squeezed working parks. At some point it's just enough, and I'm not too sure if you can really make it even more better. Sometimes this will only make it worse, and here with the prime example in Orlando, there's absolutely no need for it. If you are really so strictly on now including this absolute favorite theme that you might think it is, then why not add it above this rivered system? I don't get it. Why are you kinda destroying the whole immersion here when you have way better options in your sleeve? I mean, there's a reason why in Disney World you have there so many different theme parks, all on this location. I'm pretty sure you could figure there's something out to expand the borders of the park. And even if this is not working, then just cancel this idea, because what are you looking here for after? I don't think any park guest will now pay extra only to visit now the scarce area. I think every guest would pay extra, in fact, that this rivered system would stay in the exact way as it used to be. I know, of course, this is not the way how it actually works, since you are, of course, buying the ticket for the whole park, but I don't think that a new area on this place is ever so necessary. I mean, have a look on how the official park map currently looks like. It's completely filled with green mess, and I think you will just lose there so much immersion. I mean, it's bad enough that they changed Splash Mountain into Tiana's Adventure. I'm getting that it might not be 100% politically correct anymore, but is that really also a valid reason to completely change a so classic ride that made the initial Disneyland so great? I don't get it. And if you suddenly not only have this change happening, but the entire Rivers of America theme missing, what is left of Frontierland? I mean, it's only Big Thunder Mountain, or? So you can hopefully see that I'm very critical and subjective on this whole topic, and I'm far from happy what is going on currently. But I would still insist on staying here intentionally objective. We have to at some point integrate those changes, and they have to depict also the mistakes that they are in our opinion. Now the question that remains is what we are constructing first then. When we are doing, as I said, in variations, then we can't evade being subjective at some point. I would always argue that this is different from case to case, since it's completely dependent on the context. When was something built? How many reference images are there? And how big is the influence on the surrounding area? All those things I have to take into consideration before I can make here the right choice in what to create first here. Something like the Flower Street is something completely different than the classic ride of Splash Mountain. And also the amount of effort that we have to put into something like that is completely different. And so apart from my own decision that I'm making, of course, when I'm building in the park, I want to give you, as you are just watching, the equal amount of influence on this decision. And the perfect feature is actually possible made by YouTube directly here in those videos. We can do a poll directly right here in this video as I'm speaking. And so just for the sakes of it and to test out this new feature, what would you do? Would you now recreate this new Cars themed area that is of course not right now existing, but once it's there, since I'm pretty sure that it takes a couple of years until we get there? Or would you rather stick with the old Rivers of America theming? So I'm just giving out now this poll, and you can decide for yourself here. And please note that this is purely rhetorical and it will not have any effect on what we actually are doing then, but it's just there to get some overall public opinion on this topic here. Since I'm pretty sure that the people that are watching my videos, including you, are fairly interested into Disney themed parks, and so why shouldn't also your opinion being heard here? And please, I insist here, please write a comment and tell me your opinion, since this truly matters, I think. I'm not saying here that we can ultimately change the decision by Disney. I mean, that's impossible. This video is not about that. But since we are always talking about designing a theme park and how it works and unriddle all those little secrets behind it, including in this video game, and that in a way celebrates this creative connection that we all have with it, we are here in a certain niche where those theme parks are not only seen as another amusement fair and where you can just call it off like it's your daily theme park and you just go there to have fun. There is more about it. And that's, I think, why also your opinion right here is so very valuable in that. We are fascinated by those theme parks and how they work and appear to us in all different ways as they do. And since this game exists here, I think it has a fairly healthy effect on bringing us all together in some way. And so even if the next update of Planco takes quite some time, I have to say it. I mean, it's almost ridiculous sometimes when they are still randomly post on social media and all people are kind of questioning, how can you post that? Please bring on the next update. But even when we are swiping all of that away here, I can't avoid in saying that the pure fact that this game exists right now is a tremendous joy for us. We should be at least somewhat thankful and happy about Frontier that they made it for us in the first place. And I have full sympathy that you might say now, how can you even dare in saying something like that? They completely mistreated us as customers, made some false promises in the last couple of months, and they just don't deliver. And I have to agree even to some points. But the one thing that you just can't deny here is that the initial idea for this game came from Frontier, and if it weren't for them, we all would be doing right now something different. And this fact keeps me actually pretty confident and optimistic that we will see something in the near future again, like another feature that the community urgently asked for, like working hotels or new coaster types. And at some point, I'm sure, with enough patience in the back here, we can expect to see something like that. The thing is just, it takes time. And I could say the very same thing to my project here. As you see, it just takes time, and I'm of course alone by myself here. But to develop now a game, even if you have 20 or even 50 people on it, it just takes time and effort, and it will not happen over a couple of weeks. I think this is partly also the source where this misconception comes from. Shortly after release, they pampered us with all those monthly updates, and we were really in a mood that we could kinda expect news to this game on a weekly basis. Of course, supported by all the great content creators that brought videos out to display all those amazing things in the game. So surely I have too some reminiscence about this time period and how active they were in their approach of updating the game. But on the other side, I know of course game developing is no joke, and therefore I have full sympathy with the developing team of Planco 2. The thing that I'm suspecting and that gets me kinda upset here is just how the company itself treats their own products, their own games. Why is there so little interaction with the community? You can't tell me that there is no money for 1 or 2 community managers, like back in the ages with Ed and Bo, who mastered this in keeping a healthy and transparent connection with the game that helped grow the community and giving them a face. That's just something that I'm completely missing right now. And I'm so certain that when we would have those things in place, the game would instantly also become much more popular than it is right now. I mean, it's great to have update over update, even when there is so much time in between them. But I think you lose so many people on the way there. All those people that were maybe initially hyped up or excited about another theme park game in this quality, they are just leaving because there is so little innovation happening over a short amount of time. I mean, how long do you want people to wait here so that they again have there something where they can be excited for? Let their own imagination of a theme park always be in play by making a new announcement or community FAQ or something there that fires up this curiosity. How can I implement now this new thing that they announced into my existing theme park? That's what people want. It's this dynamic announcement so that they themselves have to intrinsically get active to build in this game, to start it up again. All that stuff is currently completely missing just because there is no vision where this game is heading to. When you don't have there a clear vision and clear communication where you want to go or where to be with this game in 1 year from today, then I don't have to be surprised about the decreasing amount of players that are playing it. When you are not even caring about what is coming into this game, or being unable to at least keep up the illusion that you might be excited to tell us what is going to come, why should we care about that in the future? So to finally conclude it now here, it's not about the development of this game, it's about the missing communication to the community. And if there aren't some friendly faces that at least make the effort or illusion that I'm welcomed and being part of this complete community that circles around this game, then I don't have there any appeal of being actually part of it. It's like you're coming 1 year late to your birthday party. Nobody will care about it. All people are in a way, gone to a different location. That's more or less what is happening. And you can kinda see it as well when you look on the interaction on videos that's circling around Planco 2, I think. When I compare that to the public interest back in 2016, 17, 18 or 19, there was a whole different hype about Planco. Now, I'm not saying that this is the only reason why we see such a decrease in public interest here, but it's certainly a very significant one. I mean, there are still people around there, including you as you're just watching, and I'm so happy and thankful that there are still people that care about this franchise and game. But still, when you compare it to the times back then, it feels like day and night. What I'm saying here is nothing new. I mean, also other great content creators like Rudy Rankamel, for example, they are telling you this also for quite some time, and in a way it's pretty weird because you would always assume that the interest into this niche of theme park enthusiasts and people that just love coasters, they are not completely changing their interest overnight or over this time period. So especially on bigger channels, I think you can see this, where only 1 or 2% of their actual subscribers are watching their videos. I mean, right here on my relatively small channel, I'm so happy that I get here a steady amount of viewers, but I can only imagine the disappointment on those bigger channels where, in theory, they should get way more views. If that now is the change in algorithm on YouTube or lack of interest about Planco 2, I'm not quite certain here, it's probably both. But even regardless of how many views you kinda get here, I think we can all agree that when the game is publicly successful and obtains a certain audience and reach, it can only be a benefit for all of us. Not only the creators or the company of Frontier, but literally everybody out there that is playing it or likes a certain creator that is working on another project. I think we can say that the more people are knowing about the game and actively are involved in it, the better it becomes in its content and what we can expect to see also in the future. So with this pretty long monologue so far in this episode, I think we've spoken about some of the most daring things currently that hopefully most of us are excited about. As I said, there is barely anything happening on the front out there. Of course, it could be that at the time as I'm releasing this episode here, that some of the things that I just said are pretty meaningless or irrelevant. I hope that's not the case. But I'm very certain that they at some point bring there something. I mean, it's only a matter of time here. But with having said all those things, I would like to come back now to our building here. We made especially progress on the lower part, and a couple of minutes ago you could see that I created this rounded ornamentation that sits over the entrance. That's one of the things that I found most difficult to create on this building, and a lot of footage was cut away here because I was literally for hours thinking how could I build now this ornamentation in the best way with all the limitation in regards of scaling and putting those different elements that we are having in the game together. At some point I found quite a useful piece here that is from the Toybox DLC, and it's pretty much this half arc where you have then on the other side like a little beam or something like that. But when you are using this thing inside a facade and where you can hide the beam thing in the wall, then you are only left with this curvature that is pretty unique when you see it from a parts perspective on the whole game. And so especially since this ornamentation features this shell-like structure that you would normally see on a Renaissance building from the time period, it presents this outline around it. And right now, as I'm knowing pretty much all the pieces that we are having in the game, this is the only piece so far that features such a unique curvature. Otherwise I would have to recreate this curvature with art pieces, but since we are working here on an extreme low level of scaling, it wouldn't nearly look as great as it does right now. I mean, so far we've spoken a lot about rounded elements and why they are so hard to we created here. So it's amazing to find now this new piece in this Toybox DLC. For me myself and probably a lot of people out there, this whole Toybox DLC is a way better source of pieces than to actually use them as they were intended to be used for. And that's kind of the beauty of Planco, right? You can use pretty much any piece that we have in the game that got originally created for something completely different to be used now for your spire or roof or trim-like structure on your another building. For me, that's still one of the most beautiful and charming things about this whole Planco franchise. You can use all those pieces in very different ways and super creative solutions, and they still look good. You kinda figured out a way how you can combine them to create something reasonable. And that's kinda the beauty of this game. This outrageous freedom. No matter what you are doing, everything that you are creating will be unique to itself. And even if you aren't aware of it, I think it displays here the most honest version of your own creativity in a game. Because you always have to kind of think yourself into a building or into a certain ride or scenery. No matter what you are creating in the end, you always have to kind of think about what it's about, and therefore you are kind of getting forced in using pieces here that you did not thought at first. And so it plays with this creativity. When you compare it to a 3D application here, and you would instead build now a building like this in 3ds Max or Maya, then surely the result would look much more accurate and realistic to its thing. But what's the charm of it? You know, somebody made that thing in a 3D application and it's just another STL file or object file. But when you see now this building in this game, and you know this fact that whatever you are seeing here is built with in-game pieces, then you will also know that somebody had to put out a certain amount of creativity to put all those different things and pieces that are originally designed for something completely different together. That's what makes every creation that ever got created in Planet Coaster 2 and Planet Coaster 1 and even Planet Zoo so unique by itself. It's like you are giving each person out there the same color palette on how to paint a certain picture. But as in painting, all people would also come up with a complete different end result. That's the beauty that I'm talking about, and it's happening literally all the time. And the perfect showcase of it is, I think, presented here on YouTube. By having there all those great creators out there, they are perfectly demonstrating that this is the case. We are all interested into the same topic of theme parks, but we are creating them all in very different ways. The tools that this game offers to us in expressing all of that creativity is, I think, oftentimes not even recognized. We are taking it sometimes for granted, just because it's so very true to its thing. From the outside it might look to you like you are just creating your theme parks, you can place down coasters and rides and of course scenery, but from the very inside out, you suddenly realize that whatever you are creating here is the expression of your true self. So you probably see that I'm a little bit exaggerating again here, but feel like that there is a certain amount of truth in it, and at least so far to me, the fact that I built back then the Anaheim Park with no mod whatsoever, everything there, all pieces are completely placed manually and all with some thought in mind, that's still something that I'm very proud of. And I'm hoping that we are kinda doing the same here on this park. Now, as you can of course see, the effort and piece count and care about placing all of those things and all the details in it is on quite another level here. But again, they all are there for a purpose. I can still remember back in Anaheim, probably in early 2019, I'm not entirely sure when exactly, but once they dropped the announcement that they are bringing the Theme Maker's Toolkit into the game, so where you can actually load up your 3D model and use it in the game, I was deeply concerned about that change. because it implied that I could instead build now this entire park in a 3D software and then just load all those buildings into the game later on, with the extremely big benefit of not having any performance issues. Also, of course, not have like 470,000 pieces in the game, but instead only like 500 or so. Now back then, but also today, I would always restrain from that mentality of recreating now this park with models out of a 3D software, just because you lose all the recreational value and creativity and expression and charm that I talked earlier about when you are doing it in that way. But back then, especially with the poor performance of literally just getting 8 or 9 FPS on average, I was so desperate and disappointed in spending all that effort, but being left with a park that was unplayable. And I mean, if you are experiencing this for yourself, and all your work is in a way pointless, I mean, it's not pointless, but at the time I felt so, then you are even considering something like that. Luckily in the end I did not went with that path, and I have to say that I mainly was also affected and thankful by some community members back then that made quite some emotional comments about that, by convincing me in the end that all my work is meaningful and that it at some point will pay out. It's just a matter of time and patience again. As you could see in a previous episode that I call Game Changer, with the right programs and tools, we are able to get a pretty smooth and playable experience again. You see, it's a matter of technology. Previously I thought that the performance by the game itself is also matching with what you see on the screen itself. But since I discovered that with the right technology, namely DLSS and this frame generation, you can kinda decouple those two things. Now regarding to the performance of our park in the long run, I have good news, but also bad news. So maybe we should start with the bad news here. So I recently discovered that when you look up this game on the official Nvidia site, the frame generation that the game is using natively is so far locked only to the single frame generation. So that means for every frame that the game renders by itself, it follows up by an AI frame. And so you can effectively double out the FPS. What is currently not supported is multi-frame generation. That's something that I thought until today was possible. But sadly it's apparently not possible, or I should rather say it's officially not supported. But I'm pretty sure that you could kinda brute force it here. There are dozens of tutorials out there that showcase that it's possible, either on games that only feature single frame generation or no frame generation at all. Now, as I'm saying that, I have absolute zero proof that this is the way how it would work in theory. I would have to buy here a RTX 50 series in order to test it. So far I'm quite pleased with my RTX 4070 Ti card, but it's pretty apparent that at some point I have to upgrade here. The only question remains here if Frontier is willing and providing at some point multi-frame generation natively. Again, I'm not a game developer by any means here, but at least the tests that I did back then with Planco 1 and lossless scaling, they taught me that something like this is possible. And when we are coming back to Planco 2 here, at some point they figured out a way how to implement single frame generation into this game. So I would argue, once you have it in your engine, you should at least, in theory, be able to upgrade it to multi-frame generation. Otherwise, I don't know why they included single frame generation at launch. Now, when you see it from a gamer's perspective here, don't we all want to create big and large theme parks like they are also existing all around our globus? When you pick up a theme park simulator, isn't this your very first thought that you are having? Oh, I want to build a theme park that looks somewhat like Disneyland. I want to have there multiple areas and all those different rides and coasters. But then I'm encountering the bad performance on the game when you reach 5 or 10,000 people. I mean, come on. What is the point in spending so much effort and love into creating a theme park when it's not operatable by your own system that you are running the game on. I mean, probably all console players right now are smashing their controller into the screen because you have this weird thing going on with the complexity meter that limits yourself from going crazy in the park, right? Personally, I can understand it on console because it prevents people from streaming or showcasing really bad performance throughout social media, since whenever you see this bad performance on the console, you could kinda get an overall public opinion that the game is not well optimized. But again, on PC, since we all have different hardware, we aren't used to that limitation, and it's great that we don't have it. And I truly hope it stays also this way. I mean, I don't want to figure out at some day that we have here an actual piece count limitation in the game, or maybe in Planco 2, who knows. And by the way, on this point, I wanted to mention a quick test that I did here in this game. So I loaded up a completely empty park here, completely throwing out everything that you kinda see in it. And then I began placing one tiny piece called, I think, baseplate anchor or something like that, and copied that thing thousands of times. And so I began placing 4 of them down, 8, 16, 32, 64, and so on. And at some point, I reached 200,000, 300,000, even 500,000, and at some point, 1 million pieces in this game. And I wanted to do such a test for quite some time here, just to figure out if there is a limitation in the game, hard-coded within it, and what performance issues you could encounter when you reach such big of a number. And so obviously there was no such limitation. You could of course on this point go even higher than that, which I at some point probably do, but I was at least very released here that we don't have there such thing. But on the other side, the performance was of course not all that pleasant, I would say. Once I hit 1 million pieces in the park, I had on average 50 FPS. Now this is of course with single frame generation on. When it's off, it's the half of it, 25 FPS. Which kinda seems like still pretty good for that high of a piece count. But I'm a little bit cautious with those values, since in this test I only copied this one piece over and over again. In our park right now we have all different kind of pieces that I would assume have a lot more stress on the GPU as well. I mean, it's not only the pure piece count that should at least be in theory calculated by the CPU, but you also have the GPU working here, since all of those things have to be rendered, right? So I assume at some point when we reach here 1 million pieces in this park, it will slightly behave differently and not so forgiving. But still I think it's way better of an experience than back then in Planet Coaster 1. And keep in mind, the park is still far from finished. And so again, I can't overestimate the importance of this new technology. And by the way, that's also the main reason why I'm talking today about performance again. Yesterday was the Nvidia GDC. Now I watched all of it. There were many parts that I found pretty boring, not gonna lie, where they mostly talked about AI infrastructure and what server models they kinda presenting there. So all of that stuff was not really interesting to me, but the one thing that was the presentation and announcement of DLSS 5. Now whenever I hear this term, deep learning super sampling, it's a little bit confusing to me. It's in a way a combinational term. On the one side you are meaning with that the super resolution, where you render a smaller frame of the game and then upscale it to your monitor. And on the other side you have something there like the frame generation, where you put AI frames between native rendered ones. But now with this new variation, it also features there something completely new, where the entire scene even is rendered by AI, which I found pretty odd, I have to say. So they showed there some images of games where you have it on and off. And at least in my opinion, I absolutely hated it, because it kinda destroys the point of this technology, I think. when you have there a model and suddenly you have a AI analyzing it and completely changing the appearance of this model, or like a face or people that you are kind of seeing there, then you are altering with the game's aesthetic. So far this was always defined by the game's art direction and the people behind that strive for a certain aesthetic and abstract look. I mean, we can take here the example of Planco. All people that you will see here, all coasters, literally everything, somebody created that in their 3D software and they brought life into it. They did not go for a super realistic look, but they found here our own artsy style that fits somewhere in between. Probably something that fits to the game's narrative. There is a very intentional fine line between realism and abstractionism, and you can't just water everything down in brute force it through AI. I think this is not gonna work and people will probably be very upset about it. I mean, you just have to see on social media when you watch this GDC. When this technology is used in the very wrong way, it will kinda collide with us humans. The values that we always put so very high when it comes to art, film, music and so many other things that humankind made so great and it defined our culture. And when there's of course now something like I saw in this GDC is completely disrupting the aesthetic part of a video game, then that's absolutely to be criticized here. In my opinion, this technology should be applied in a very smart way in order to make the gameplay experience very smooth. It should be in the background to help with the performance, not in the forefront by being the star of the show here and completely changing the artistic value of the art direction of this game. And so therefore I found it quite disturbing, this whole announcement. When they would make it at least optional here, then again it would make sense, because on some games that tend to have a pretty realistic approach by themselves, like Escape from Tarkov or Battlefield 5 or any game that puts realism over everything, then sure, go for it. But for other games like this one here, I don't think that this is the right curve of evolution. Not gonna lie, I would be pretty interested how this would kinda look like. But when you suddenly have guests in your park and they change their faces literally all 3 meters that they are walking, I mean, it's kinda a creep show here. I just don't think that this is the right way, because as you can see, it also works without it. And so I'm hoping that all those new technologies, they only serve us as saviors of our performance. Otherwise, I don't see any need anymore why I'm sitting here. Then a AI-generated voice could tell you all this stuff, and you would watch instead a time-lapse of a park that got created by AI, which is, at least in my opinion, absolutely horrible to even envision something like that. There is a good reason why, hopefully, most of us feel this way, why it seems so disturbing and maybe even anxious. I mean, it's currently not only happening in the video games industry, but literally everywhere where you look. When you even just write a little document, you are granted by all those possibilities that help you in writing. And I will say that there are some benefits of it. I'm not saying that I'm not using them at times, but when it completely replaces your complete self in all your expressions that you are making on social media, in those videos, whenever you're building here something, then I suspect that it will at some time replace your own existence, or rather the need of it. You are becoming meaningless, irrelevant, and at some point AI might take over. I'm not kidding here. The somewhat dystopian scenario that we might see in a film like Matrix can turn reality. I'm not saying that we are anywhere near something like that, obviously not, but I think it can be the beginning of it when we aren't cautious here, when we are still having here some time and space, when we actually can react to it and change the direction where all of this is heading to, then I think we should act also upon it And when we, for example, see something like this now in this niche of video games, which is not anymore a real niche here, I think, then we should at least have here some strong and solid criticism about it. And lastly, especially also in regards of Planco here, I'm hoping that this is not the start of AI-generated parks. It would be just a horrible incident that you are unable to know whether a park is built by humans or AI. So with having said all those things today, we switch over to our real-time section. So let me welcome you back to our real-time section as always. Until here we've spoken about so many different things, about very little I think about the actual building, so I'll try to do it in a second. As you can see, I also have the Sky Studio mod running in the background, and I have to say it's quite a bit funny after we talked about Nvidia and the change in lighting with this new technology of DLSS 5. This mod makes it kinda irrelevant since we have already full control over its lighting and we don't need anything AI generated here, I think. But as I said, let's shift our attention to this building here, and I mean, what can I say? It just looks absolutely gorgeous in my opinion. And as in the beginning of this video, the proportion speaks volumes here, I think. For instance, many times I had this happening that I just look on my building that I have created here and something looks odd, and in the first glimpse you don't really understand even what is so very wrong here, and it's in 90% of the cases just a missing or wrong proportion. Certainly a building can have the right color and the right elements on it, but this still has no real effect on the actual proportion that it has. And especially since this building also looks pretty Renaissance-like, this would immediately pop into your eyes, because everything is so very in order on this facade. So I would definitely recommend, when you are doing a recreation on your own, spend there really enough time in training your own eye to see those things. Since once you are able to see them also in the very process as you are constructing the building, it's only for your benefit here, and the result will look way better. I mean, surely when you take out now the magnifying glass and look truly on the exact proportions on each of my buildings that I have created here, certainly you have there some tolerances here. But I just think later on, when you have the entire scene here, the whole street built, and all of those fine little details, including the backlot, in place, then the sheer impression of that will probably overwhelm you in some sort, what you're seeing just visually on the screen, that I'm very confident and hopeful that this is irrelevant. Or maybe not irrelevant, but in a very low amount, almost not noticeable. By the way, something that I have now adjusted correctly is the sun's positioning. So earlier, the sun would always rise in the west and then settle down in the east, which is of course not realistic to reality. But since we are blessed with this God-given mod here, we can just simply adjust it and make it accurate to the location we are working on. So what I did here, I looked for online solar sites where they kinda show you all those statistics that they give you about a location on the world where you have solar data. As you can see, you can pick here any day throughout the year and it will exactly calculate the ellipse that this sun will take throughout the day. And furthermore, it also reads out the exact anglement that this sun will have during a day. And so for me, this was also the key value that I kinda translated then over into this mod. And so for example, when you have at noon an anglement of, let's say, 61, then you just calculate the rest until it gets you to 90. So in this case it would be 29, and that's exactly what I put into this latitude offset that this mod features. Now the best thing about this workflow is that you can still have here a day and night shift also in the park. You just have to untick the time of the day so that it's only controlled by the game itself. And in that manner you have here, perfect, accurate, natural lighting as it would also appear on this location in the world. And since we are doing a recreation here, this is one of the most amazing things, I have to say. I mean, I told you that I, in before this mod, really thought about moving everything to the other side of the park. So I can't be here thankful enough, since I probably would be in quite a rage when I figured out at some point that we have something like this here. But as we see now this park also with the light strips on and on nighttime, it's extremely relieving that we always can adjust here when there's a certain area too bright or too dark, simply by this mod. And literally all light bulbs also here, they don't emit currently any light to the surroundings around them, right? And that's of course intentional here, since at some point we will go through this entire Main Street when it's done to properly light up this whole area, and for that we need the entire area to be built. So I think we can all agree that there are still lots to do in this Main Street, and it's super far from finished. But you suddenly see that it becomes to life, and especially with something like this mod. I know I repeat myself here thousands of times with it, but I just can't overstate how amazing it is. I mean, just look at it. When we wouldn't have here such a beautiful tool in place, then literally everything, all of our efforts here in making a highly detailed recreation is kinda held back by the default lighting of Planco here. It can truly shine as it should. I'm not saying that the lighting that comes with Planco 2 here is by any means bad, but when we aren't able to control it to our desire, we can't display the foundations that we need in order to make here a photorealistic aesthetic. So with having said all those lovely things in today's episode, I would like to conclude it here, and first of all thank all of you just by simply watching this video. It shows kinda your interest into theme parks, Disney, Frontier, Planco, and perhaps even my project and me. Personally, I'm very excited right now about this entire franchise here, since we just don't know what is going to come. At some point, we will notice this on social media probably, and then I'm just hoping that not only you and I, but also Frontier themselves are kinda happy about what is going to come and what we are kinda expected to see in this wonderful game. Furthermore, I think this is it for today. If you enjoyed it, as always, please subscribe, like or comment. Consider becoming a member on this channel to gain pre-access to the park, join our Discord server, watch my other videos about Anaheim or Orlando, and thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.